Welcome back. Thanks for coming. This is lesson 5, and this, we think, is one of the more difficult conversations to have because we're talking about hospitality in general, about hosting, giving, taking care of folks, seeing their needs are met. And yet, we live in a finite world. We have finite resources. We have a finite amount of time. We have individual responsibilities such as jobs and caring for kids and doing things that require attention. Our church has finite resources. We cannot be all things to all people all the time. And so, as called people, it sometimes gets frustrating to know, where do we draw the line? Where do we draw the boundary? How do we draw the boundary? And Kira and Katie and I discussed it before the camera went live, and we discussed the fact this was a very difficult conversation to have. So, Katie, why don't you tell us how hard this is?
It's really hard. It's really hard, and I feel like I could go in a lot of different directions for kind of how the ways in which hospitality is hard. I guess for me personally, right now in my life, making room for others, for the stranger, is about making time. And I feel really protective of my time, given the work that I do, given, needing to tend to my family life. And I just feel so protective of it that it's really hard to open up time-wise for me. So that's kind of the temptation, is just to almost overprotect my time. And not have time for people, for strangers, for new things. So I think that's kind of my personal, where I have to always be navigating a boundary of what I can and cannot do, because I could burn out. So that's where there's kind of a limit and a boundary for me, that I just have to kind of continually try to figure out how to define and redefine. Like, I'm always kind of working with that. So that's one place. I'll let you kind of say something, Kira, and then I can go on if we need to.
I just popped around to like 5 different places in my head on this. The tension, so you mentioned time as part of that tension of when to put boundaries. That doesn't even feel selfish to me. I almost said like when to be selfish and not selfish, but that's not the right word at all.
Right.
But then there's, the book that we base this whole series off of talks about how open door and closed door is one of the best metaphors for hospitality and not being hospitable. And something that came to mind, maybe people will think this is silly, maybe people will disagree with me and I shouldn't even say anything, but we can always take another take. But you two know that we just recently realized that we lock our playground.
Right.
And it sounds so silly that we just realized that, but in everything that goes on in our defense, which has never really crossed our mind. And Katie and I's offices are right by each other, and from there, often we will see the families of this neighborhood riding their bikes in our parking lot and just playing on the cement with their families and their parents all hanging out, and it's really cute. And then
we've got this amazing playground they can look at.
we realize, like, what in the world? So now we're going to unlock it and welcome our neighbors into a playground. But I think why did we lock it? Oh, we're afraid. I'm using we loosely, but that things might get stolen. So that's the tension is, do we want to risk having some bikes stolen? So then we need to lock the gate, but we're supposed to be welcoming. it's just, so we've ended up with, they're just a few bikes. We also could put them in a shed, and if someone really works that hard to steal it, I guess they really need it. But it's funny that even the smaller level, that there was a tension of like, should we unlock it? Oh, yeah, we should unlock it. This is silly. Why are we even
didn't
doubting
even
this?
realize we were locking it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just what we did.
yeah,
The way we did things.
yeah. We've just always done it this way. That is probably the catchphrase for this question, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just how we've always done it. You could insert that with family life, work life,
Right.
how you drive.
Well, and a stranger comes in and doesn't know how we've always done it. And are we going to try to get them to do things the way we've always done it, or be open to some kind of change?
So I think Sabbath comes into this at some point, because we can give and give and give and run ourselves down. I think the point of the Sabbath is a boundary, the gift of rest to those who strive to do the right thing the other 6 days of the week or so. I think learning to say no is a hard thing for some of us, but saying no when it's imperative to say no, and not say yes and yes and yes, so that we burn ourselves out. Part of our protecting our schedule and our time. But I think the Holy Spirit is involved at some point in this. And when my kids were young and we'd pass, people on the side of the road, knocking on your windows and asking for money, I would make the speech to them that that in general you shouldn't help these folks. You're perpetuating, and they're, as a pastor, I'm aware of plenty of food banks and homeless shelters and resources that I have access to. And then one time we were at a gas station and someone knocked on the window, and the kids were in the back seat, and I gave the person, I think, $20 and rolled out the window and went on. And my daughters were just fun. Dad, you tell us never to do that. You never tell it. You always. And I'm like, well, sometimes you just feel like it's the right thing to do. And, something about that situation just tugged at my heartstring, and I felt that was obligatory for me as a Christian. So I think you do have to pay attention to the Holy Spirit in your midst and the stranger. And when you feel that, when you feel compelled to help, I hope that you have the courage to help. And it does take courage to step into an active situation to help. So this is a hard one. Listen to the Holy Spirit, get your rest, set your boundaries, and try to be faithful.
I actually want to add one thing. That's one of the favorite things you've said to me, Katie. I don't even know if I've ever told you this, and it was in passing, and I think it was just a week of you having to do what John was saying. Like, I don't even remember what happened. Like, if people were coming in off the street, or just there were a lot of people in the hospital, and then you were trying to have your own life too. And I think you said something like, I'm just tired of having a Jonah day. Or I just don't want to be Jonah anymore. And I understood it. Well, you were just expressing like, I'm so exhausted and I can feel God calling me this way, and I just don't want to go. And that's what Jonah did, of like, oh, no, God, nope. And then you end up having to go by a big fish. But that's always sort of stuck with me, that sometimes we take on Jonah's, but then we have to follow through and trust and rely on the Holy Spirit. And that's just always has stuck with me a little bit.
Okay. Thank you for listening, and we ask God to bless your work.